We choose what we believe. And the things that we choose to believe are vitally important. It's vitally important what we choose to believe. This is one of my favoriteest times of the year, I have to say. I love this time of year. Spring is the best for me. There's a number of things that happen in spring that I love. First is my birthday, which was last weekend. And so I love my birthday. And this year for my birthday, I was given the time that I wanted to clean out my garage, which sounds weird, but when you're in your 40s, it's a joy to clean out your garage. I don't know why. And so anyway, at least it is for me. Some of the wives are saying, hey, but I love my birthday. And then so besides my birthday, there's Easter, which is awesome, and we love Easter and all of that. And then, next weekend is this golf tournament in Augusta, Georgia called the Masters. I love to watch the Masters. It's the first major of the year, and I love to watch golf. And so that's awesome. But my most favorite day of the entire season is actually tomorrow, April Fool's Day. I love April Fool's Day. I look forward to the pranks that I will pull, and I have some really good ones planned for tomorrow. And I love it. And I've learned that with the trick with April Fool's Day is to use the right kind of prank. So it's important because what you want is for people to believe your April Fool's joke, or else it doesn't work. And so what I've learned is that people normally will believe negative things more easily than positive things. So if I say to my wife, I grab an envelope and I say, guess what? We got a bill. It's $1,000. She'll believe it. But if I say, Amy, we got a $1,000 check in the mail, she'll say, I don't believe it. And that's just the way it is. We believe the negative things and not the positive things. And so tomorrow, don't say to somebody, hey, that's a great looking shirt, April Fools, because that doesn't work and it's insulting. Instead, the better approach is to say, hey, your shirt's on inside out. And they'll go like that, and then you say April Fool's Day, and it works. But my best April Fool's joke, I'm going to tell you, was several years ago. At my previous church, I had started this Tuesday morning communion service. And at this communion service, I kind of did the same little ritual every week. And I'd been doing it for about a year. And so I had in that chapel, we met in the chapel, and I had the cup and the bread on a table behind me, just like this. And so my normal routine was that I would grab the cup and the bread, and I would bring them and I would set them on the little altar rail, and then we would do the communion service. And so this particular April Fool's Day, it landed on a Tuesday. So I planned ahead, and what I did was I took a purple piece of construction paper, and I cut it up into these tiny little squares, and I filled the communion cup up with this confetti. And so my plan was that I would take the cup and the bread just like I normally did. No one would suspect anything because that was normal. And as I was going to set it down, I would fake trip, and I would go like that with the communion cup. And my plan was for it to, go all over. And so that was my plan. And I knew it would work because it would be such a horrible sight to see all of this, what you would think was juice coming at you. You would believe it because that would be a negative experience. And we tend to believe negative things. What we choose to believe is vitally important. It is so vitally important. And I've learned that with this negative positive thing, that it's so important to tell my kids positive things. It's so important to tell my kids, I'm proud of you, I love you, you're amazing, you're my favorite son. I say to my daughter, you're my favorite daughter, even though we only have the two. And it's important because that hopefully they'll begin to believe it. But what I've learned is that if somebody tells a person a criticism, they typically will believe it. If they tell them a compliment, they usually don't. We just tend to believe the negative things rather than the positive things. And I tell my son and my daughter that whatever comes in your mind, and if it comes into your mind that you're not as good as somebody else or you're not as smart as somebody else, don't believe it. Because if you believe it, then you'll become that. Because what we choose to believe is so vitally important to our life. And so it's better to believe in positive things, even though it's harder to do than it is to believe in the negative things. What we choose to believe is vitally important. And we see that going on in the scripture passage today in Luke 24 that Kelly read from. We find that we are now, it's Easter morning. It says, on the first day of the week at early dawn, they, being the women, came to the tomb taking the spices that they had prepared. Normally, when a person died, the body would be prepared with spices and then put into a tomb. But they were not able to do that because it became sundown and it was Sabbath at that point, and so they weren't able to finish this. So they come back at the first possible moment early in the morning, and they bring the spices to do this. This is Jesus' body who had been crucified 3 days earlier. When they get to the place, it says that they found that the stone had been rolled away. This stone would have stood about this tall, probably, and it was about 1.5 feet thick. It was put into a track that had been created for it to roll one way and the other. And so it would have been rolled into place. It would have been a very heavy stone. And when they get there, they find that the stone has been rolled back. They see this, and then they go into the tomb, and they do not find the body of Jesus like they had expected. And while they're there, they're perplexed by this. It says, suddenly 2 men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. 2 men in dazzling clothes. Now, I can tell you that this morning I was wearing some dazzling clothes, and somebody told me I look like an angel. So when it says that these 2 men are in dazzling clothes, we're talking about angels, I'm guessing. So anyway, okay, if you saw me earlier, you might have thought I was dazzling. But and so they're there, and these 2 dazzling men are there, and the women, they're terrified, and they bow their faces because they know it's an angel. And so they bow their faces to the ground, and the men say to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? Why do you look for the living among the dead?" Why would they look for the one who said he would be raised from the dead? Why would they look for him? It's because they chose to believe that death was the end of Jesus' life and that Jesus was dead. And then they say, "He is not here, but he is risen. He has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be crucified after being handed over to sinners and on the 3rd day rise again." They had forgotten this. But then they remembered his words. They remembered his words, and they remembered that he was to rise from the dead. And so they run back to the 11, and they tell everybody there, "Guess what? He has risen, just like he said he would. He's risen. We went to the tomb. The stone was put back. We went inside. There were these men in dazzling clothes, angels. And they were there, and they said, 'He has risen. He's not here. Why do you look for the living among the dead?'" And you know what the 11 do? They say, "It's an idle tale. It's like an April Fool's joke. No, this can't be. Dead people stay dead. This can't be." They chose not to believe what they were being told. But Peter gets up and he runs to the tomb and he looks inside and he sees the linen cloths by themselves. And he went home amazed at what had happened. Each person in this story is confronted with a choice. Do they believe the positive good news that Jesus has been risen? Or do they believe the negative message that, no, he can't be risen? That their choice of what to believe was so vitally important, and it's the same choice that you and I are faced with today. Do we choose to believe that he is risen or not? What we choose to believe is vitally important. It has an impact on our lives. And it's not a choice that we just make on Easter Sunday. It's a choice that we make every single day. We choose to believe in the resurrection or we choose not to believe in the resurrection every single day. And if we choose to believe, things can be wonderful. I told you about the cup and the bread, and I took that cup and the bread, and the cup was filled with the confetti. And I went to set it down, and I fake tripped, And I went like that, and I can remember this purple paper just flying, and it just absolutely hit my target. I was so excited, and it was the choir director I was aiming at. He was sitting in the front pew, and it just was perfect. It just went all over him, and I remember it in slow motion. And as it's flying out, and I see the look on his face, he was totally freaked out because he believes the April Fool's joke. He believes that this is sticky Welch's grape juice that's flying at him, and his face is like, and then after it landed, though, and he realized that it was just paper, his expression changed from sheer terror to joy, and boy, I felt so guilty in that moment because I realized you just that was sacrilegious. I mean, you just completely just ignored the sacramental value of this moment and then I started feeling bad for doing, because I had picked him before this. I knew he would sit there, and I wanted to get him, and then I started feeling bad about getting him, and I had juice, and so I poured it in the cup, and we had communion, and then after the service, I went up to him. I was like, I am so sorry. And we were picking up all the little pieces and putting them into the cup, and he had this hairdo that's kind of puffy, and it just is like made to attract confetti, and so I'm like picking it out of his hair, like a gorilla in the rainforest, and I said, I'm so sorry, and he said, no, I needed it. I needed to laugh. I needed a little joy in my life. And I thought about it, that what it was is he got showered. He got showered by the cup of salvation. The cup of salvation, that cup that's on this table, that cup of salvation, he received a showering of grace. And that cup of salvation is the cup of salvation. Within that cup is all of the grace of God poured out for us that we are to receive. The resurrection makes that possible. It would not be the cup of salvation if Jesus was nailed on a cross and buried and that was it. It's the cup of salvation because of the resurrection. And if we will receive the gift of resurrection, if we will choose to believe that he is risen, we can have so much joy in our life. We can have forgiveness. We can have peace. The cup of salvation tells us that no matter what happens in our life, whether life is going well or life is going badly, death does not have the final word. No matter what happens to us with our families, with our children, with our businesses, the last word is life. The last word is grace. If we will believe in the resurrection on a daily basis, we can have life to the full. We can be showered with grace every single day. What we choose to believe is vitally important. The choice is ours to make. So who do we choose? What do we choose? What do we choose to believe? Amen.